movie I saw recently that I've been wanting to talk about that gets me excited is actually The Green Knight. It came out in 2021. Very great movie. Like I don't it's been a while since I've seen a medieval movie deliver the way that this one delivers, and it has so many cool elements to it. It's a medieval acid trip is what it is. It just kind of it takes you for a freaking spin, man, and I recommend it completely. It it just brings so much to the table and you're just not expecting it. And because of its I mean, it is done based on the old poem called The Green Knight. And I don't know how many people would have read that or know anything about that, but you know, in some cases maybe that makes it more lame, but in this case, the way that they spin it, it makes it so satisfying and so cool and so interesting to watch. And you're just along for the ride, man. So if you haven't seen it, I say see it. It's awesome. It's great. The main character is Gawain. Gawain is not a he. Well, we're in for context. We're in Camelot. Okay, this is King Arthur's Camelot. The sword of the stone boy. He's pulled the sword out. He's had many great victories. His kingdom is huge and wealthy and happy, and it's just awesome. And Gawain is on the. He's the nephew of King Arthur. He's had a very pampered, padded life. So he's just debauching himself, basically. He has a favorite semi-committed woman that he likes to sleep around with, and he likes to get plastered every night. He doesn't have a whole lot of responsibility. It's Christmas Day. There's a big old feast for Christmas. King Arthur and the Queen are talking to Gawain, and you got all the big bad knights of the round table there. You got Lancelot, you got Galahad, you got Bors, you got everybody. And all the adventures have already happened. They were already all famous. And Gawain wants to be like them, or at least he wants to be seen as them, but he's never gone out and actually done anything about it. So he hasn't had any of his own adventures, and he doesn't really have the the drive to. And so it does create an interesting dynamic where the king and queen have faith in him that he'll find his opportunity. And lo and behold, a massive green knight shows up, and it's not just a knight; it's this big otherworldly creature. He's kind of covered in this bark. He's like a tree, but he's got this armor on, and he's got this beard that's like kind of branches out, and just woo, like this guy is cool. And big girthy guy, all green, rides in on his horse in peace. He's not there to hurt anybody, but he says, I've come to play a game, basically. And King Arthur lets him in, and it's festive and stuff, and so they're kind of like, okay, this is weird. Still a very mystical creature that shouldn't exist. They're all kind of freaked out by it. He gets off his horse, and he's just this huge guy. He's got this big old axe, and he says, I want to play a game with any of you brave knights, anyone who will play it with me. And the game is someone will draw their sword and strike me, and then in a year's time, I will return the blow. And that's the game. And not wanting to be tricked, no one really speaks up, and King Arthur eventually says, well, if I wasn't so old, I would take you up on it, but I'm I'm not I'm not what I once was. And so Gawain sees this as his opportunity. He's like, dude, sweet, I'm gonna jump in and play this game because I'll be famous if I do. And so he jumps in, says, I'll do it. And then the king's like, well, do you understand what you're doing? He's like, yeah, yeah. And so the king offers up his sword to Gawain, and the Green Knight, they're thinking it's going to be a little bit of a combat thing, and the Green Knight just puts his axe down, and so Gawain is like, okay. So he swings, and he cuts the head off of the Green Knight, just lops it right off. Blood everywhere, and the body just drops, and everyone's like, and then slowly the body just gets back up, picks up the head, and the head just says, 1 year. And then he starts laughing, and he rides away. Because of how crazy and just otherworldly that experience was, and all the big dogs saw it all at the same time in real time, Gawain becomes this instant celebrity. He already has, he already has a comfortable life, but now he's got so much more money and fame just heaped on him just for that one experience. And so, you know, it, he just lives it up. He continues to just drink himself stupid, sleep around, all the things, and he eventually the year passes by, and if if the if the Green Knight's promise holds true, then that actually becomes a problem because he cut the guy's head off. Like he said, the blow would be returned. So like, is Gawain gonna lose his head? Like, is he gonna get hit? What's gonna happen? And so that's what we're dealing with. And this is where it gets really cool, is because he finally arrives at that moment where he has to decide what he's gonna do. And the king basically says, "Hey, it's time where you have to go see the Green Knight and in the Green Chapel and finish the game, finish this thing that you started." And he was like, "Well, is it really that big a deal?" And it's just like, I guess we won't know until you go out there. And this is so great, because they managed to depict Gawain in such a way that he's not a total coward. He's not a total wuss. He's formidable, but he's not courageous. He's not out there trying to be brave and be the big bad knight. He's just looking to have a good time. That's just who he is as a person. And so when he's actually thrust out there into the wild, he has to travel miles and miles out to the Green Chapel to find the Green Knight. And he runs into all kinds of problems and crazy things once he gets out there. And, you know, they become this testing ground across time, so that he has to suffer and he has to be humbled and he has to find his internal strength to carry on and to carry this out, because this is what made him famous. This is what made him the legend that he became so quickly, and so if the narrative needs to be finished. And so when you go through this, there are things that happen to him, immediately when he gets out there. There's some thieves that stop him, and it's awesome because I'm gonna start breaking this down, and there's gonna be spoilers. So, if you haven't seen it, stop. Watch it. It's good. If not, I'll just keep going. These thieves come, and like some guy was trying to give him directions. He gives them bad directions. They end up being thieves, and rather than fight, he's got a sword. He's got the Green Knight's axe, which he's supposed to return. I guess I forgot to mention that, but he's got everything. Rather than fight them, because he's not brave, he surrenders immediately to 3 of bandits, and they're teenagers. Like they're not dangerous, but they take all his stuff and they tie him up and take a bunch of his stuff, and it's very interesting because, and if you guys know anything about this, if anyone has any input on this, I'd be happy to be clued in. But this one of the characters, he's like, well, as they're taking his stuff, he does eventually ask, can you at least tell me where the Green Chapel is? If it's not too much trouble. And one of the thieves says, "You're in it." Then they take his stuff and run off. So I have a growing theory about that I'll probably come back to. But what's interesting about it is they do have a dual thing going on here with Gawain's experience, because they tied him up, gagged him. He's just lying on the ground, thrashing around. He gets tired. He falls asleep, has a dream about dying there, right then and there. And then it jolts him awake, and he's just like, no, I can't just lay here and die. And, in their haste, they did leave his sword. They took the axe, but they left the sword. So he crawls all the way over to his sword and eventually cuts the rope and starts walking to where he thinks the Green Chapel is. And eventually he finds a house in the middle of nowhere. No one's in it, so he sleeps in the bed, and he starts seeing crap because this girl shows up who's sort of real, sort of not real. He's a little confused now. And it's just interesting where they take all this stuff, man, because she says, I need you to help me find my head. And he's like, what? And and so she leads him out to a pond. He dives into the pond and retrieves a skull that he finds at the bottom. He's like, I guess this is her head. I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm tripping right now, I think. And so he gives it back to her, and then the head fills out, and it's her head, of the girl that he saw, and it's just like, whoa. And it's kind of like the foreshadowing dynamic that's like, hey, time to pay for that fame that you took, all that sort of thing. And it gets kind of scary. And I guess I forgot to mention something kind of important. Gawain's mother, the sister of King Arthur, is kind of a witchcrafty type of person and dabbles in some strange things. She gave him a green sash that she says will protect him from any harm, which he does put on his belt, which also the thieves took from him. So he's concerned about that, and he doesn't really believe in magic and any of that crap, or at least not in any serious way. He doesn't really believe in much of anything, but he did believe that would protect him because it came from his mother. So, and that had sentimental value to him, and it was gone now, and so he's very, very vulnerable at this point. And so moving along, that random house that he ends up at, when he retrieves the head, the axe appears in the house. And so this is where I'm starting to bring up, like, here's my question. If you guys know, if anyone watching knows, what's going on here? Like, I feel like after he crosses a certain borderline from Camelot, he's in the Green Chapel, and this is just some kind of spacey trip he goes on, like, to finally arrive where he ends up arriving. And that this is just some kind of mythical portal that he ends up going through, that just has these points that he needs to go through. And maybe he only traveled 5 miles the entire time, but didn't know it because of the trip he was on, so to speak. So the Green Chapel is not even a literal place, even. It's kind of the metaphor for his journey. Am I touching anything there? If you guys know, let me know, because that's what it's looking like to me with all the weird crap that's going on. But anyway, a fox shows up during his travels as he continues. He carries the axe with him now. He's just walking with the axe. And a fox, who seems to represent the spirit of his mother, or the witchcraft of his mother, kind of following him, leading him, guiding him, whatever's going on there, helps him along the way. And then eventually you see him really struggling now. He's starving. He's walking around struggling to make fires and stuff. He's like, finds mushrooms that are growing on some rocks, and he tries to eat them, and then he throws them up, and it's a rough go for Gawain. And this is really necessary because they need to show his suffering. They need to show the lengths that he needs to go to make this a valuable pursuit. And they do a great job of that. And eventually he comes to the castle, and some random freaking castle that seems to only have 3 people in it. And so the lord of the castle is extremely welcoming, and just wants to shower this guy with all his stuff, and just is so happy that he's there. And the legendary Gawain, this is great. And it's just like, who even is this person? I don't know. But I guess another thing I had to mention, Gawain's preferred female back in Camelot, she very much wanted to have Gawain for herself, and she wanted to pretty much be part of Gawain's life in a lot more serious matter, and he was on the fence about it. He wasn't sure. And she always had this cloak or whatever that had little bells on it. And she took a bell off and gave one to him before he left, to represent their love, or whatever you want to call it. And she's low level peasant girl, still attractive, but just low level peasant girl. She kind of wanted to be a part of Gawain's life. And another detail about Gawain is that being the nephew of the king, if the king didn't have any kids, he'd probably be next in line, and for in line for the throne. Like big freaking deal. He might be the next king of Camelot. And so the ramifications of taking a peasant girl to wife for a potential king, is gonna cause some drama there, some Game of Thrones level drama, potentially. But anyway, the wife of the host of this castle, or the lord of this castle, looks a shockingly lot like I said that wrong. Shockingly looks a lot like his girl back home. But she's very elegant and she's very well dressed and has long, beautiful hair and all this stuff. But there are a lot of similarities between the two of them. And she is remarkably seductive towards him as well. So they're obviously very welcoming and very whatever. And so he's just kind of like, I don't know what to do here, but it's good that I have a place to stay and I have food and all this stuff. And so there are a lot of romantic undertones between the wife and Gawain, and he has to figure out how he's going to approach the situation. And eventually she shows him that she has the green sash. Don't know where it came from. That's why I have a rolling theory that this is all an illusion. He's going through it in his mind, or he's on a trip, an acid trip or something, in his own head. But this woman has the green sash that will protect him from any harm, because they start to tell him the Green Chapel is near and the Green Night is near, and it's getting close to the full year of the cycle, the next Christmas Day. So he has to go. And so, how do I put this? She seems to suggest that a certain intimate favor would be a fair exchange for the sash, and he's sort of says yes. I don't know. It's a weird exchange, but basically, in order to compromise he was willing to compromise his virtue in order to get the sash back, which is another look at the fact that he's just not that courageous of a person. But he feels ashamed of it shortly after he takes the sash, puts it on, then finally goes to finish what he came here to do, and that's meet with the Green Knight. He finds the Green Knight. The Green Knight is asleep, and he's sitting in this stone throne, sort of. And then he wakes up on Christmas morning and says, all right, you ready to finish the game? And he's like, okay. It's just like, sweet, I'll just pick up my axe. Thanks for bringing it back, and we'll get on with this. And so he has Gawain kind of bend down, stick his neck out, and he's just like, all right. And Gawain goes through this process of like, he flinches, and he's like, wait, I'm not ready. And he's just like, and one of my favorite lines is right here. One of my favorite lines of this movie is right there. And he's just like, did I flinch when you struck me the blow? And he's just like, no. And he's just like, you have had a year to find your courage. And then Gawain says, 1 year or 1,000, it wouldn't make a difference. And just you feel for this guy still, because he's not a hero. He's not courageous. He's having such a hard time reconciling this, and you're just like, dang, And so finally he thinks he's got it, and then the Green Knight lifts his axe up again, and then Gawain freaks out and just runs. He's like, I can't. And he runs. The Green Knight doesn't pursue. He runs out of the little foresty enclosure that he ran into where the Green Knight was, and his horse is waiting for him. His horse was stolen from him originally. His horse is waiting for him. So he rides all the way back to Camelot, and everyone just kind of forgets that it happened. And so, with that, the king is getting really old and really sick, and he doesn't have any kids. So Gawain is eventually named the next king of Camelot, and you do see a kind of you see this sequence of all the events that are going to happen afterwards when he gets back. And so, you're seeing he reconnects with um his love interest. He starts, they're happy to see each other, obviously. And but they show particularly that from the time that he left the Green Knight and the Green Chapel, he does not take the sash off for anything. Bathing, banging, nothing. He does not take it off, and he never does. And so eventually his love interest peasant girl gets pregnant, and then you see how the character within Gawain starts to come out as well. He, rather than marry her, rather than commit to her, he takes the baby and leaves her. Jerk, And then he marries a highborn princess. She's very beautiful. Has kids with her. And and it's nonverbal. It's just kind of slowly showing the timeline. His kid grows up, and they're kind of in the war room, and his kid knocks over some of their pieces on the map and stuff, and he's just looking at his son like, he's just this undisciplined little boy, and he's just a little disappointed in him from the look of it. And then it splices to, a little longer after that, where the country's at war, and then he's in a tent, and he's holding his son who's bleeding out, who's dying from the battle that they've been in, and he's devastated that his son is dying, and he just having a hard time with it, obviously. And then as he's strolling back from the battle to Camelot, and this is where you really start to see all the symbolism, all the metaphors kind of taking a cycle, right? And so the crown of Camelot has this golden circle or halo, I guess you could say, behind it. And if you don't take care of metal, it starts to turn different colors. Green, it starts to turn green. It starts to look unkept, and it's one of the first signs of decay, right? And it starts to show on his crown, and so it's this greenish color, and it's like, oh my gosh! And so when he's coming back into Camelot, he gets rocks thrown at him by some of the peasants, because they're really pissed off at him, and things are not going well. And so this has the craziest twist. This is one of the coolest endings I've seen in a long time. The Green Knight, man. Wow. So they show it, and this is almost like a Macbeth type thing going on when they show the end. He obviously is losing to his enemies. Again, they don't explain any of this verbally. It's just kind of a timeline that they're showing of Gawain becoming king. The enemies at the gates, they're banging things down. Everyone leaves. He's sitting in the throne room alone eventually. Everyone leaves. And then it's just him. And then you see the light kind of come in from the gates. They're inside. They've come for their revenge, or they've come to destroy the king definitively. And before they can do anything, Gawain lifts up his tunic or whatever and pulls the green sash he's been wearing his whole life since meeting the Green Knight off. Takes it off and tosses it away. And then right there, his head just immediately falls off and he dies. Like, holy crap. Like, I did not. This is mind-blowing, actually, when you think about it. Like, the sash was magical, and it delayed the blow. It delayed the game. So as long as he kept it on, he wasn't going to get hurt. But it delayed what he knew he had coming and what he agreed to completely when this all started. And then he died knowing he lost every single thing that he had, every single thing that his family had, all of it just gone because he decided that he was not going to have the courage to take the blow from the Green Knight. Like, whoa! And then another twist, it pulls back and he's right there in the Green Chapel again with the Green Knight next to him. None of that's happened yet. And the Green Knight's about to lift the axe and go, and he says, wait. Lifts up his tunic, takes off the green sash, tosses it aside, and says, okay, now I'm ready. And then the Green Knight kneels down to him and says, well done, my brave knight. And now, off with your head. And then it ends. He found his courage. He found his stones. Like, yes. Yes. Awesome. My goodness. Good movie. Good movie. Fantastic ending. Like, it's not anything like you've seen before. It's not action-packed. It's not even, I don't even know that you would call it a thriller or even, it's just this fantasy drama that just pulls you in, man. And if you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. Like, the cast did a fantastic job. The writing, everything they did, even the CGI that you see, because there are trippy moments. Like, watching it in Blu-ray, like a high quality, if you can, is what I would suggest. It's very pretty. It's very, lots of things, but good movie, guys. I love it. It's become one of my favorites for sure. One of the best movies I think that has come out recently at all, because I don't think a whole lot of new movies have been great. You know, again, if you have extra input about this movie, mention it, because I want to know as much as I can, because I love this one. So thank you for watching Green Knight.